it has me wondering, like, is it because you guys have given up on this planet? Now, when we want to talk about, that devastating moment where we actually decide, Earth is not going to be inhabitable in X years, and these people have made just this decision, and that's why we're putting so much money into, trying to find Planet B. We as humans need to change our behavior regardless of giving up on this planet. If we decide to colonize another planet, if we continue in the same manner and behavior as we do on this planet, even if we find another planet.
My friends and I have been on a crazy journey for the last couple of years, building a company that really was a disguise for building a community. We named ourselves Inertia Network because we wanted to be reminded to never let inertia own us and to break it whenever we have the chance. Our adventures have led us everywhere from swimming with humpbacks in French Polynesia to having a beer with locals in North Korea. And this podcast is our attempt at sharing conversations with people that inspire us, push boundaries, and embody what it means to break inertia. My name is TK, and I'm one of the co-founders of Inertia Network. I hope you can join me in learning the philosophies, mindsets, and stories of people that live life on their own terms and ultimately guide you in breaking your inertia. Okay, so today I'm joined by Jenny Wong, fellow Canadian scientist and badass nature photographer. Hi Jenny, thanks for joining me. I'm super stoked to have you on.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me today.
So kind of just to jump into it, I did a little research, and from what I can see, you've been from the very beginning. It seems like you've been focused on nature and wildlife for your photography. I was kind of curious to understand and know how did it all start for you, and how did photography kind of become this vehicle for you to express your thoughts and show people what you kind of care about.
So growing up, obviously there was Nat Geo magazines. I grew up with paperback, not digital copies. But I think my family loved traveling, and I've always traveled quite a bit. It's always been in the plans, it's always that passion of mine. It first started just wherever, very blindly going among anywhere that looked interesting. I went. And a camera always came along for the ride, but I think it was when I started, going to Africa and Antarctica and seeing wildlife and shooting that kind of stuff. That's when it really spoke to me. I knew the story that I wanted to tell, and it made photography a lot more powerful for me. It wasn't just a paperweight that I was carrying around to capture my memories. It was something that I wanted to share.
So before you really kind of found the nature, was photography still something that you were interested in, or do you always just have the camera and then when you found the nature photography that it really became something that you really put more time and effort into?
I think so. When you travel, everybody has their phone, or everybody enjoys taking pictures. It's just when someone wants to, when you take a picture and you just want to capture what you're seeing versus being able to tell the story of something. You have a focus, you have a shot list almost, right? I think that's the difference of how it kind of changed for me. So, I mean, I'm like everybody else. Some of the first backpacking trips I went on, all we had was a little Sony cyber shoot between me and my girlfriend, and we took great pictures and we enjoyed it, but it was, for one, all that we could afford at the time. But another thing was, if I look back on those pictures, it just I was snapping pictures. I was snapping pictures mindlessly instead of consciously thinking about compositions and storylines and being inspired and trying to be creative with those shots. It was just I was more into being out there and experiencing it versus actually focusing on, I guess it's like almost like work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for you, do you have any like any people or individuals that kind of have like pushed you or inspired you to kind of like go down this path that you're currently going down? People that are kind of like for you, either like a role model or like someone that is uh, like in your corner, kind of like getting you to go out there and kind of like pursue this kind of life, or is this more so like it's just self motivated?
So I think like, you know, I love reading, and I only read pretty much nonfiction. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of documentary kind of stuff or research papers, Nat Geo stuff. Definitely looking at Paul Nicklin's work and seeing
Mm-hmm.
how you can meld that scientific information and making it more alluring with pictures definitely was inspiring. Like MIDI, all those amazing Nat Geo photographers. So definitely, I think for any wildlife, nature photographer, if Nat Geo is always being, you know, that go-to inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have a lot of friends that have taught me a lot, shown me the ropes. You know, I'm not, I've never really been that into landscape per se. Like I love the
Mm-hmm.
adventure, but landscape is something that I've only gotten into, I guess, like in the last 2 years, getting to know some fellow Instagrammers and them taking me on to show me how they tell their story. It's really
Mm-hmm.
inspired me because I think, um, you know, people that love wildlife photos and wildlife stuff in general, they already are, you know, like some of your greatest advocates
Mm-hmm.
conservation, and they're already very into that. And I think telling the story isn't necessary. It's great for them. It's, you know, they're like rah 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 right behind me on this. But the thing is, it's not about changing those people's minds and convincing them that they need to step up to the plate. It's convincing other people and expanding that audience via, you know, different outlets of artistic photography, like telling the story of adventures and stuff, and how that applies to conservation. I think that's important, like growing that audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people that are necessarily interested in, you know, my story in the Arctic, you know, that some people just that are adventure photographers that, you know, they're only into skydiving, they're only into diving, they're only into whatever. Well, in my feed now, I just dropped them something from Antarctica, and it just happens to pop up, and they happen to read it. Great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I think that's the goal. It's not necessarily like spreading awareness, right? Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you only spread awareness around circles that you're that are interested, then you're not really spreading awareness. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're sharing your story, but you're not spreading, making people more aware of the
Mm-hmm.
situations, right?
It kind of becomes like an echo chamber of where you're only surrounded by people that already agree with you instead of like also, which is a great thing, but also trying to encompass more people so that more and more people are kind of aware of some of the problems that you're seeing. Or so I totally understand that.
Yeah, like when it comes to climate change, like on my platform, like I do have a lot of trolls, I guess, that
Yeah.
are non-believers or people that are uh, hunters or whatever. Do I always agree with what they do? No. Sometimes, like, I can understand their perspectives and stuff, but it's about having that conversation, and not just shutting them down just because they don't agree with me or I don't agree with them. It's about
Mm-hmm.
having that conversation, and it's amazing that they engage in me in whatever manner. And it's about me putting out my facts, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what I know and what I read about. And if they are open to having that conversation to begin with and just reading what I have to say, perhaps at one point or another, I could change their mind about that.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I mean, change isn't. I don't believe in like 180s. I think that it's a gradual process,
yeah,
and all,
absolutely.
yeah. Usually, like it takes time to kind of like integrate an idea because I think when we have certain frameworks of thought, uh, and something is introduced, uh, often we kind of reject it because we attach so much of that framework of thought to who we are, but instead of just thinking of it as an objective kind of point of view. And so but then slowly over time when people realize, yeah, we're having conversations and it's like we're not there to kind of like make like a person's not there to make you feel bad about the way you think, but to just explain their point of view. And that's so kind of slowly where you find that common ground and kind of like shift
Yeah.
perspectives.
And it's not about polarizing either, right? Like when you
Hmm.
start polarizing economies versus environment or
Hmm.
human rights versus animal rights, and when you start polarizing everything, I find that it becomes very difficult
Hmm.
to find that common ground where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't even like, there's a lot of environmentalists that don't even want to talk about economies or anything like
Hmm.
that. There's animal right activists that are like, if you eat meat, you're a horrible person. Well,
Hmm.
like when you are so polarized in your ideas and you're not open to having those conversations, then your sphere of influence is pretty much the people that believe in you, like that
Hmm.
have similar views as you, and you're pretty much just getting into conflicts with, like you're polarizing them, you're pushing
Hmm.
that audience that you want to influence even further away from you, and change comes when we can come together and
Yeah.
create something that we can move forward together on, like everybody can live with this idea, right?
Hmm.
So I think when it comes to climate change, when it comes to, we don't really have that much more time, so
Yeah.
we need to come together. And it's very apparent now, like in this pandemic, that economies are very important as well. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, like there's a solution here. There's somewhere. We just need to come to common grounds to make those sacrifices.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about right now is like it seems like a really good time to, because I think there's a lot of people who are kind of waiting for things to get back to normal. But the way I look at it is right now we've kind of hit like a soft reset on a lot of things, and so why not think about what we can do to kind of like change our, like, so once things are starting to like calm down with this whole pandemic, uh how can we create a good foundation, like a better foundation than we had in the past?
So about this, like I think there has been like so much reflection. Like I mean, personally, I think everybody has had personal reflections about, did I waste the freedom and time that I had prior to this?
Yeah.
Like, where am I going with my life now that I'm locked inside? Like, do I enjoy the nature a lot more? I enjoy the company of my friends and family a lot more. Like, there's a lot of things that people are going through emotionally, personally, mentally, spiritually. But even as a country, as a nation, as a world, I think we're starting to see, what our human behaviors are like, what our societal
Hmm.
behaviors are like, what are the systems that we have in place. And I think this pandemic has really shown how short-sighted we are in,
Hmm.
a lot of the things that we think about when it comes to economies and costs is that
Hmm.
we plan for now, and like we need this reward right now. Like we need our
Hmm.
economies to be, gaining 8%, 10% every year. Expansion, expansion. And um, letting a lot of other things fall at wayside. And when you stop doing these other little chores to keep humanity alive, such as healthcare or environment, when those things catch up to us, the cost economically, the cost on human lives, the cost of on society in general, like life in general, is astronomical. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that, if we put in the money, put in the cost, put in the time and effort right now, and we don't postpone those tasks, we would eventually save a lot of pain, a lot of money in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to reap the benefits of the economy, reap the benefits of our planet and everything, of healthcare, whatever, um, and have our children pay for it later on.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, is I think the big message when it comes to this pandemic.
I think people are just, and I think overall, as an average, people are just a lot more short sighted in kind of like their mentality towards improvement. And it kind of, I don't really know how to change that, but it just seems that, like, even with the way governments are run, um, it's like it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act for them to kind of keep everyone happy, but also, you know, get people to be aware that, sometimes you might have to make small sacrifices to kind of make everything better. But because of the way the world, in a lot of ways, certain things are run, it's just very difficult to accomplish those things.
Well, we're a very like consumer based, addicted
Yeah.
society, right? Like, I mean, I think we are all guilty for whatever things that we feel incredibly passionate about, be
Mm-hmm.
it fashion, fast fashion, great
Mm-hmm.
fashion, travel, plastics, like convenience. We're very,
Mm-hmm.
very stuck in our ways when it comes to a certain lifestyle. And I think, like, you have been to some third world countries, as have I. Um, People do with a lot less,
Oh yeah.
like, and it is really up to what you're used to. Like, for those people, this is their standard. And when you're used to a certain standard, like, for them to change out of those standards, to go to verse back, like, to add another hour of work in the day to till their farm, that's a big deal for them, right? For
Uh-huh.
us to lose the convenience of single-use plastics, kind of a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. Even for outdoor activists, people, things that you don't think about when it comes to plastics, like our textiles, like my Gore-Tex. Can I
Mm-hmm.
actually do an expedition without Gore-Tex?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are the alternatives, and are alternatives good enough? Um, those are the things that I think becomes really hard for us to grasp the
Yeah.
scope of change that is required to, moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one thing is, like, we probably shouldn't be moving forward in all of our advancements. Like, I mean, plastic is in oil and gas and energy. These are amazing scientific advancements, as with medicine and vaccines and everything. And it's it's made life really easy. It's extended life.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been great for the planet? It's been great for humanity. Our people can live to
Yeah.
amazing ages. We have really long lifespans now.
Mm-hmm.
We can do a lot more. We can travel. Like, humanity is living great, but
Yeah.
the rest of the planet, the rest of the things that occupy our planet, due to these things, are not living great. Do we need to live to 150? I'm gonna say no.
I don't
you
think so
know,
either.
right?
Yeah.
Can they make us, be able to live to 150? Possibly one day, right? But
Yeah.
is that technology? And I think that's where humanity needs to draw a line.
Mm-hmm.
Where are our dollars being spent? Like, I get kind of irritated when I see we're building billion-dollar telescopes, super super telescopes in the
Yeah.
world, and we can't even clean up our oceans. We're going spending billions of dollars going into space, and we can't spend the money to clean up our oceans. of plastic. There's plastic
But, but,
islands, you know?
but then what about your thoughts on like the people that are kind of have that same mentality as you, but they're a little more I don't know the like I guess pessimistic about it, and they believe that we have to leave, we have to get out of here.
I think to some degree, like, it has me wondering, like, is it because you guys have given up on this planet? Now, when we want to talk about, that devastating moment where we actually decide, Earth is not going to be inhabitable in X years, and these people have made just this decision, and that's why we're putting so much money into, trying to find Planet B. We as humans need to change our behavior regardless of giving up on this planet. If we decide to colonize another planet, if we continue in the same manner and behavior as we do on this planet, even if we find another planet, we would be like, the species of planet destroyers,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Marvel action.
Yeah, like yeah. I don't know if you
Right?
read comic books, but like Galactus.
Yeah, so I feel like regardless of where we go at, we as a
Hmm.
species can be better. We shouldn't be a tumor
Hmm.
on a planet. We need to be better. We need to change, even if this planet is unsavable or savable. Um, if we find another planet, we need to be better so that we can survive on another planet or on this one. It doesn't
So
matter.
do you think that with the way the population is growing, and there's like a constant like if we look in the past, I don't know, 50 years, how much how many more people are just alive on this planet, and the current rate that it's going at, do you think that we can save the planet?
I think saving the planet, I'm going to sound very communist about this, but
Yeah.
you know, humanity has grown into this thing where I feel like we believe in these things called human rights, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that we believe in, right? Like our right to
Yeah.
reproduce, our right to guns, our right
Yeah.
to freedom and speech, and then that trumps everything. It trumps everything to animal rights. It trumps
Mhm.
everything to, where we can live in habitats.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like 8 billion people, as we approach 8 billion people, there is a carrying capacity for Earth. And the more humans there are, the less resources there are
Mhm.
space for wildlife, for other things. And when you take out some of these species, some of them are keystone species that would collapse an entire ecosystem.
Mhm.
Um, it will affect us eventually. That lag time might not be within our short lifespan, I guess,
Mhm.
but when you're looking at future generations, you're going to start seeing the repercussions of what we do today.
Do you think that like the generations like, that are that are young right now are doing are being educated well and doing a good job, and like kind of positioning us to be more conscious about how we kind of exist on the planet?
Yeah, like so there is a saying in, like, the green with the green people, we are the first generation to understand the repercussions of our actions, to understand climate change. And
Mm-hmm.
then we will be the last generation to really be able to do anything before this becomes irreversible. Like, there's already
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that are baked into what we have done, and we can't change that, but we can change the course of where we're heading to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to the younger generations, like, I feel like there's a push where, your child comes home and they say, what are you doing to the planet? What are you doing to my
Mm-hmm.
future home? Um, when kids are going onto the streets and starting movements, and they don't want to work in industries that um, partake in damaging our environment. They don't want to buy products that are damaging to our environment. I think
Mm-hmm.
those things are a huge movement. But at the end of the day, it's about people of age that can make a difference voting,
Mm-hmm.
voting for right policies and trying to get the right policies and bills in place to protect the environment. Those are the big things that are going to make a difference, because at the end of the day, it's not just about us. It's about, you know, in Canada, I hear, Canada, we have barely any people. We barely produce any emissions. Like, why is it our problem? Why is everyone hammering on us? Well, I think there's countries that can afford to, and I'm going to get, slammed for this, but there's countries that can afford to make a difference, and
Mm-hmm.
all the first world countries can make a huge difference. Um, the thing is, the first world countries are some of the largest consumers. We might not be, and America in general might not be, number one um, polluters, or Canada might not be number one polluter, but there's a lot of emissions that we don't take into consider.
Yeah.
Like the products that we buy, the emissions that are going into the air because of the products that we buy.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're producing it over there for us.
Yeah.
Then we send the trash back to them, and then they burn it for us.
Yeah.
So those emissions are because of our consumption, not because of their consumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like it's like
Well,
stuff like that. I think.
yeah, it's interesting. I know I agree with you because a lot of what our convenience is built on is the pollution of the world, and
It's a
you know,
world. Yeah, it's like a global emissions, right?
yeah,
So
and then we look at other countries and we see like it's funny because even um take take Socotra for example. There's a lot of garbage in the cities. Like that's just the reality of it. But the thing is that uh, as a foreigner coming into a place like Socotra, it's really easy to make those judgments, but not but we usually put the framework behind where we're from, and we think of a first world solution to like we try to apply a first world perspective to something that's just not first world, that's developing, and it's not the right way to look at things. And like in all honesty, I think we have the luxury of having the time to think about these things comparatively to like we don't have to worry about whether or not we're going to be able to drink water. We don't have to worry about not being able to sleep in a warm safe place. And
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah, like those basic survival things are just kind of not even in our cards. Like we don't.
yeah, they're so kind of in the back burner for us now that it sometimes we forget to practice gratitude towards the fact that we do have those things.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to, like you say, like, do they have the resources to clean up their island or wherever, the third world country? Like, do they have the resources to get where we need to get to curb
Hmm.
climate change or to change plastic issues or whatever? And the reality is they don't. They really don't, especially with how the planet in general consumes. Like, if we continue to want to buy palm oil stuff and our countries don't regulate it, well, guess what? They're going to continue to cut down the jungles in Indonesia. If
Hmm.
um, we on this side decide to keep on choosing fast fashion because it's cheap and dumping it out, well, they're going to continue to produce it. They have really
Hmm.
no choice. We have a choice. You can choose to not buy that. Um, but the other aspect of conservation and curbing it is how much money can we provide to help them change those systems and make their industries cleaner. Um,
Hmm.
that's been one of the big topics, I think, amongst you know all the nations when it comes to like these Paris Accords and climate change. Is that if we really want to move forward with this, like some of these have countries are going to have to fork out a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
to help the have-not countries get up to pace with this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not just because they are the top polluter, but this emissions thing isn't how much you are emitting compared to me. It's the fact that we all consume on a global level, on a global economy. So at the end of the day, that emission that they're emitting over there is just as much mine as it is yours. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So I guess, in your opinion, what is the thing that you think needs to change immediately? Like, let's just say you had one thing that you could change right at this moment to make the planet a little bit more sustainable.
population
Uh,
control, without a
Population
doubt.
control.
I know it sounds horrible, but like I said, 8 billion people. Like, if you look at the charts, like if you listen to some of these documentaries, they're like, our population is stabilizing. Is it
Yeah.
really? Like, I mean, over the last like 40 years, where has our population? It's been like skyrocketing, and they say the next boom is happening in Africa. The next we
Oh
already
yeah.
had the Asia boom, and the next population to boom is going to be the African continent. So I mean, yeah, economically it'll be great for them, but the thing is, if we let 8 billion become 16 billion, what is the world really going to look like? So even if we were like, and that is possibly why we need to get to zero emissions, but like zero emissions is, you know,
It seems like
it's
it doesn't seem very likely.
yeah, like I mean, I'm gonna say like let's say we cut our emissions today by 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
70%, 80%, whatever. There's always going to be like some residual kind of leak in our emissions or in our consumption rates
Mm-hmm.
of resources in general. Be it even if everybody went vegetarian and we had to grow all of our resources, grow all of our
Mm-hmm.
food, that farmland can be exhausted. And when you're like that is one of the resources, like
Mm-hmm.
farmable land. And if we deplete those resources because we let population get out of control, um, we will catch up, right? Like, yeah, we made it more efficient. There's an efficiency limitation. Like, you can only make that
Mm-hmm.
soil so efficient. You can only make a plant so efficient. You can only make a car so efficient. Um, but if you let 8 billion become 16 billion, then eventually we will catch up to all the savings and all the amazing feats that we're making to save our planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, are we going to say we're going to be zero plastic? Are we going to say we're going to be like zero, like petrochemicals in general?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. I would say that as of right now, today, or in the next, I would say 5 years, um, petrochemicals are still going to be in our lives. There's still going to be Gore-Tex jackets, and there's still going to be some amount of energy that is from petrochemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you let that, even if you cut it down to 80 or 90%, close to zero, any leakage that we have, if you continue to let population grow, you'll just catch up to those emissions. You'll
Mm-hmm.
catch up to that, all the plastic that we saved. Well, you just had like doubled your population. So even if you cut plastic use by 50%, now you're back at square one again.
Yeah, 50% of 16 billion is still 8 billion.
Yeah. So
So then what about something um that you would say, uh like, let's just say someone like myself, like something people can just do.
um, there's a lot. Like, I mean, reading labels, being cautious of packaging, all that stuff is great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but buying used, like there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Just like people with animals, like, you don't need to buy like some name brand animal pet. Go adopt one.
Yeah.
When it comes to clothing or whatever, buy something. If you're going to buy new, buy something that's going to last. Something
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to have, like my Gore-Tex jacket, probably I won't need another one for a long time. Like, my cousin told me his Arc'teryx lasted him 7 years and it's still going strong. I'm planning on having mine for like 7, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, if you can wear um, organic fabrics like hemp and cotton, um, what else? Try to eat less meat, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People think that it's really, really hard to change that eating habit and stuff, but it really, really isn't. You just you'll be healthier for it for one, just because of some small restrictions of not having to easily jump into any restaurant and order whatever you want, right? Um, but what I do is, when I'm on the road, I'm pretty flexible, but at home on the daily, I try my hardest to cook more often, to prepare those meals, and if I were to go out, there's always some sustainable choice that I can have on the menu. Knowing what you're eating, right? Like, I think that's one thing that we're really, really detached from. Like, you're not okay with a guy hunting a bear or a seal or whatever, but you're okay with going into the grocery store and buying meat packaged in plastic. So you realize that a cow is just a cow, a pig, a chicken is just as valuable of a life as a bear, a seal, an elephant. So, I mean, I'm not saying that don't eat meat. Just
Yeah.
know. I hope you know what you're eating,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, I
the,
agree.
the life that was given so that you can consume it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the life that they had, I think, is a big thing. Like, I do respect that someone hunted their food a little bit more than someone that bought food packaged in plastic and have no idea, like, had no emotional connection with having to kill something, like understanding what it is to eat meat. If you had to physically manhandle an animal and
Yeah.
watch it die in front of you, I think you appreciate what that life meant
Mm-hmm.
that you just took
Mm-hmm.
so that you can live and eat,
Yeah.
right? So,
I've had those experiences. I mean, I haven't like personally killed, but I've like been right there when someone has done it, and it's actually very, it's like it impacts you more than you would think, uh, because it's such a removed process getting like meat at a grocery store.
yeah.
It doesn't even resemble an animal. It just meat, right?
Well, it's funny because, like, okay, we're both Asian, so I mean, you've had a fish with a head on, right?
Oh yeah.
So in North America, it's not a thing. Like, I talk to my friends about it, and they're like, I can't eat a fish with a head on. Like, they have to chop off
Mm-hmm.
that head and then pan fry or fillet it until it doesn't even resemble a fish.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in many parts of the world, you would never buy a fish without its head on.
Mm-hmm.
You would never, like, if you went to a restaurant and the fish didn't have a head on it, you'd be like, I don't know when that was killed. Like, is it rotten? Right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
fresh. If you
Yeah.
This thing came from frozen somewhere, or it could have been rotting for all I know before you filleted it into nothing.
Yeah.
So in North America, like, we eat fish with no resemblance of even a fish.
It's
But
true.
in most other countries, like, you would, if you're at a restaurant, there is no way you would be appalled if there was no head on that fish.
Uh, kind of like going back to the whole, environmental thing, but more on like a personal side. You you you're often on the ground, right? You're often photographer. You're the photographer behind behind the scenes, taking photos of the nature and wildlife in a lot of countries. But then, from when you've started until now, how have you personally witnessed how um, our effect on the planet is changing these like habitats or negatively impacting wildlife?
Um, yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I haven't had the pleasures of traveling to, the real remote Antarctica and the Arctic several times, but without a doubt, like when you start seeing images before, like I do a lot of research before I go, and even the last time I was in the Arctic, the season is planned for flow edge season is typically about like 8 weeks, I would say. Tours typically run for 4 to 6 weeks of that. And into the first week of June, which is typically, usually still pretty solid ice, we were having problems. Like we were there was a lot of companies that were thinking maybe they would cancel the coming tours, some of the last tours that were coming in just because the ice conditions were so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was the fastest that they've ever seen the ice break up. I was commuting from Clyde River into Pond Inlet, and everybody was like, the last lead, which is like a crack in the ice that you'd have to cross. It's very, very dangerous. Just be careful. They said that it's been bad already, and we were, approaching it. And as we approached it, it was sketchy. Like we rode up and down, trying to find, the best place to cross this. We're on snowmobiles, so we have to pretty much jump it with me sitting in the back of a Kamatech, which is like a box.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, it is what it is. We have to get over it. We were really lucky because then in a couple days, literally, I think next day or the day after, we kind of drove out and took a look at that lead, and it was like a gaping ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so like if we were any later, if we had any issues, we probably wouldn't have made the commute.
Mm-hmm.
And my guide told me, he's like, the flow edge this year is the largest flow edge we've ever seen, which is where the ocean meets the ice. It's where the melt is, um, which is amazing for wildlife. Like, I mean, for us to see it, the edge was so huge that uh, often if it's smaller, like there's only just like a smaller area for people to stand and look. But it was huge. Like, so we were never around any hunters. We were never around any other groups. Um, yeah, like I have seen it. Like it's very evident. But as you visit a place more and more often, which I hope to go, I was supposed to be back in the Arctic this May. Um, you see a place again and again and again, and you start seeing it for yourself how fast it is melting. But even within just being up there once, I definitely noticed it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should never be that warm. Like when I got to Clyde River, there was no snow on the mainland of Baffin's.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
We were really struggling. We couldn't get out through the bay because it was packed ice. So we were like, we had to go through land. And the amount of snow that there was, like we had to really like try to get our snowmobiles like around into those little patches. And there's parts where we're like, oh my goodness, like we're gonna break the snowmobile before we even get out onto the sea ice because
Wow.
we were driving like trying to avoid these giant rocks in the tundra, like because you can see now the tundra ground, right? You're just like, oh, this is gonna be so rough. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
tear us up, right? So, but yeah, comes
That's
with the
pretty intense.
expedition. Yeah, didn't really want to fix a snowmobile, an hour into our expedition.
So, is there anything that has like any reason that's drawn you to kind of like to the polar regions?
It's the front line of climate change. It's where you can actually really see it. I mean, they have so many, like, so many characters up there, so many species up there that are so charismatic that it really conveys that story really well. So from a perspective of landscape, it's something that you can see super, super quick, how climate change is affecting it, melting ice, you know? But then the other aspect is when you look at the animals that are there and their stories that you can tell through the images of them, from penguins, you know, to polar bears and seals. I mean, walruses. Uh, they're pretty charismatic creatures to photograph. Um, but the other aspect is if we don't fix this issue, I mean, a lot of people can't personalize the effects of climate change because they don't feel like they have seen them. You know, people in Alberta say, I wouldn't mind warmer winters, right? When we have -40 winters. But, you know, the effects of climate change is felt the most in the Arctic regions. Um, that change translates to a lot of different changes around the world, from crazy wildfires to crazy storms in our Caribbean. And if we can't stop and protect that biome, sea ice, and the ocean temperatures up there that are rising at double the rate of anywhere else in the world, um, then you know the rest of the world. It might not be today that you feel incredible impact. You know that you can just say, "Yeah, that was climate change, 100%." We'll feel it eventually, and I think when you look at insurance premiums due to erratic weather patterns that are causing crazy wildfires that can burn up an entire continent in Australia, or even ones that just keep on coming back, like 100-year fires that are like back to back to back in North America. Um, I think insurance premiums are going through the roof because they just can't keep up with it. It's just billion. Like I think one of the articles I read was that typically they pay out about $500 million due to natural disasters. Right now they're up to like, you know, $2-3 billion, you know, every year that they're paying out for natural disasters, from floods to wildfires and whatever, like storms and stuff, right? That's just, I believe in Canada. So when you're looking at stuff like that, yeah, that's a quantified number. Like, what has changed to cause this? You know, to cause this. Like, when you want to look at the economy, how is it affecting our economy? You know, how much? Yeah, it generates jobs to build those homes, GDP, but that GDP is not. It's not real. You know,
Yeah.
it's rebuilding what we had.
Yeah. But you know, yeah. I mean, I think with the whole idea of what was interesting is like the whole idea of what our economy is built on. I feel like it needs to be it needs to be redefined. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I think that if we use the same metrics that we've been using, uh, we won't. We're kind of just going to be stuck in the same place and not be
Yes.
able to really make improvements.
So, like, I don't know if you've ever read the book called Debian.
I have it in my bookshelf. I haven't read it yet.
It talks about like humans, the history of humans or whatever, and how we became so successful. I do believe that it had a lot of truth in it when it said, like, you know, one of our most powerful things is we can work together. We're like the strongest species together, weakest species by ourselves. And our ability to work together is our ability to believe in things that don't exist, to believe in
Yes.
myths, in religion, in policies. Like, these are not tangible things. These are not things that animals believe in because you can't touch it. It's make believe, you know.
Yeah, it's like you
Um,
try to give a tiger $100. It's like that thing's
they
just gonna eat you.
yeah, the EU, right? So, I mean, when we can believe in economies and we can believe in GDP and stuff, yeah, like those are fictitious things that we have learned to believe in their systems, but
Yeah.
they make us work, they make us function together, work together, right? Which is a great thing in some regards, but is our metrics right? Now, like Bhutan is like, you know, deemed one of the best countries, you know, like successful countries. Like they love their king, and they don't judge their the success of their country by GDP. They have like it's like global happiness scale or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think it's like a happiness index or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard
happy
about that.
index or something. So it's kind of more about the well-being of the individuals that
Yeah.
live there, right? Um, is it a fairy tale? Like, I mean, it is a small country, small nation, and it works for them. It might, and some will argue that it wouldn't work for the rest of the world, and probably won't.
But
But
there was a time when what we believe in did not exist.
oh,
And
absolutely.
so to say that we can't change is I think it's a I and by no means am I saying it's easy to change, but by saying that it's not going to be we wouldn't be able to make it work. It's like the first step of things never changing.
Yeah, I also think that it's about our motives behind like creating GDP. That huge focus on GDP right now is like it requires a growing population to continue to
Yeah.
expand, right? And
Yeah, that's why even going from what we were talking about earlier about even when you said population growth, in my mind I was thinking it seems like the economy and the growth of the economy goes hand in hand with population growth.
it does
So we
hundred
need
percent.
to redefine growth. Um, if creating nature sustainable environment is a goal, we need to kind of redefine what growth and economy looks like.
Well, I think when we get into know automation era, like I think that's coming. There's a lot of chatter about AIs and automation and everything. When you get into stuff like that, and you have mass amounts of people that are unemployed, and they're talking about global income funds and stuff like that. This is something unprecedented, even especially coming from the U.S. Like for someone, a politician that was in frontline papers talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a big deal for them. Like that's a very socialist move. That's nothing like America.
Mm-hmm.
But they're seeing, like these systems are failing because, when you look at healthcare systems that were based on, how much can you afford? Well, when you only have like, 200,000 people like in let's say Iceland and Scandinavia and stuff. Yeah, you have healthcare, you have everything is sustainable, you can have a pretty good standard of living. When you start having countries that are heavily, densely populated, and eventually there is no economy that can really sustain a decent lifestyle and standard of living for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like for absolutely, you start having huge disparity issues. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like it's sad, but like you don't have healthcare, you'll have like a huge proportion of death too, like from childbirth to just life expectancy, right? So to some degree, I think that will balance it out a little bit. I'm hoping. Like, sounds horrible, but I mean, medicine is getting pretty good. But the thing is, they're also saying that medicine is going to be more like this new age medicine that can truly extend your life quite a bit longer will be only for the rich, sadly.
Will only be what? Sorry, I didn't get.
For the rich, right? Like, I
Oh yeah.
mean, when you're looking at, I think as Canadians, we just really have zero grasp on the cost of healthcare, like cost of medicine in general.
Yeah.
If you talk to an American, they'll probably be able to tell you, like, how much every antibiotic costs.
Which is like both.
A
It's like
blessing and a
it's a blessing
freaking
and like
grudge.
yeah. I mean, most people probably wouldn't be able to tell you how much the water for the tap costs.
Yeah, like it's something that we just don't even think about. Right? But when it comes to medicine, I think that it's going to be, you know, they're talking like this new CRISPR thing when it came to gene therapy and stuff. Like, the cost of creating that medicine or developing these medicines costs so much now. We haven't created new antibiotics in way too long. They're grasping at straws now to try and find a new antibiotic. But when they do find it, the cost of it is going to be astronomical, right? Because they have to recoup the cost of generating of research, years and years of research and failed research. So, yeah, like they say, some of these therapies are going to cost, $500,000, $1 million. In the U.S. system, it's going to be definitely for the rich only. In the Canadian system, or ones that are heavily subsidized in Scandinavia, know, in our healthcare system as well with insurances and stuff, there's going to be policies that can't afford to cover, top of the line cancer treatments that really can save you because the system just can't afford it. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean for pharmaceuticals or for, I don't know. Like, I read about it and it's kind of alarming, but at the same time, when we talk about population, it's kind of like, I guess it's exactly what we say. Like, it's that, I have a lot of love for my parents, for my friends, for humans in general. Don't want my mom to live forever, absolutely. But, at the same time, it's kind of like I want people to live a decent standard of living, but I also don't believe that people need to live forever. Or,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like I say, it's like kind of like human rights, animal rights, healthcare system with disposable plastics. Like that has disposable plastics have saved many lives. When it comes to sanitation and spread of disease when we have like these disposable syringes down. But then the other offset is the environment, right? So I think with everything we have to take things in strides
and like kind of like seek to find a balance, right?
Yeah, and I think like every new jump in technology now isn't necessarily the greatest thing. Like we really have to start questioning, are we designing ourselves into extinction? Are we designing ourselves into, not evolving anymore, which I don't think we are because we're just changing everything so we don't have to evolve,
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So,
we're playing God.
well, I mean, that's kind of like what we
Always done.
strive to kind of do, right?
Yeah.
It's I feel like it's kind of having control is kind of in our nature, or having the desire to be in control is kind of in our nature. But there's very few things in life that you can actually really
Come on,
control.
like Spider-Man, right? Like with great powers comes great responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah.
We need to really amp up our accountability in the world, like how we conduct ourselves as a species. Not just to ourselves. I think that's a big thing to look at is like, like I say, we keep on talking about, how much we love our parents, how much we love humans. I mean, human rights, all for that. But on the other flip side of the coin, it's just, human rights, but just in general, like we need accountability to our planet, not just to one another. So if we need to take those hits as humanity, like, can you all reproduce 10 kids? Is it in your power to? Yeah, you can. You have ovaries, you have sperm, you can have 10 kids. Is it responsible to have 10 kids? No, not as a species. Can't all afford to have 10 kids, So, is it an infringement of your rights to have 10 kids if I tell you you can't? Yeah, it is. That I think that's why when we talk about population control and stuff, there's gentler ways. Like, there's no politician, except for maybe China, that's ever going to say you can't have babies. For
Yeah.
one, like you say, it's your economy too, right?
Yeah.
And most economies need more population than the fact that they can't sustain the population anymore.
Yeah.
Which was the case of China. They're like, well, it's just getting too crowded.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, I think there's a lot of amazing people that have gone out there and they have correlated that, the decline in population comes with women's rights, with better sexual education, giving women futures. So, when women have a voice in society, when they have uh, confidence to say no,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get married at 21 and have
Yeah.
babies. I don't want, I don't need to go on this path of, being that stay-at-home mother. I want a career. When women start saying, I want these things in my life, then perhaps they start having children later in life. And so they don't have 4 children. They might have 1 or 2 or none. I think that's been the approach when it comes to population control, which has worked really good in first world countries where women have had those opportunities. Now, when you go and look at other places in the world, women are still pressured to, there's still places where young girls can't go to school because of their period.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I think it's walking into the right direction. It's just, I don't think it's fast enough. Like this.
So for you, it's like it's like you would just like to see the rate of progress and the rate of change to just increase, because what you think is right now, the way it's going is just not enough.
It definitely isn't on an environmental scale when it comes to climate change, plastics in the ocean, all that stuff. Like there's plenty of scientists that will tell you that, like, if we don't change, like, significantly, like U-turn change within, I think it's 11 years, like the impact of what we would add to the environment, like the additions that we're going to add, the accumulation of carbon emissions, global climate change and warming and all that stuff, it's going to spiral out of control to the point where we can't actually turn it off anymore. We can't turn it around. We can't curb it in any way. And it's going to go down a really dark road where parts of the world will be uninhabitable. Some of these parts of the world are some of the heaviest population density. So if you think that, we have refugee problems right now just because of human, conflict, you haven't seen anything until you see, refugee issues due to the fact that there's entire swaths of the earth that are uninhabitable. It's like islands that are going to flood.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that makes me a little nervous because, Vancouver's a coastal city, and, if the sea level keeps rising, eventually we're gonna lose parts of the city slowly.
Yeah, well, actually, one guy designed. There was a new article this year published. He was like a scientist that actually proposed something that seems completely ludicrous. It was about building a dam to hold in the North Sea from the ocean rising to protect some of the major cities in Europe. So the dam would extend, I believe, from England into France and then from England to Norway, damming in the whole North Sea.
Like,
And
seriously?
the North Sea would become a freshwater.
Like, is this a legitimate, like, scientist, or is it like a?
No, it's a legit scientist. He's actually done like the feasibility studies and like engineering studies and stuff. Like, to some degree, even like how much it would actually cost Europe to build something like this, and it would pretty much just protect, like, some of the biggest cities in Europe from rising ocean levels.
So they're trying to save Venice.
Well, he says like, this is like what the world would look like. He didn't design and do this study for the mere fact of like, he actually thinks that we're going to actually build this today. He's just like, well, like, what is it going to look like if oceans truly rise to the level where it would swallow some of the biggest cities in Europe? Like, what are our solutions and what are our outs? And this is what he designed. And when we looked at the feasibility of building something like this, how much it would cost to European GDP, was feasible. And like we would sacrifice a lot of the marine life in the North Sea, but then at the same time, as a fresh body of water, different life a new biome would exist there. But it is an absolute, like, I just told you that, and you're like, is this a real scientist? It sounds absolutely ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
But these are the ludicrous ideas that we would have to play with in the future if we continue down this road, right? Like, that's his idea. His idea isn't that we're going to build it. It's to show you, yeah, if this continues, these are the ludicrous ideas that we are going to have to contend with. And yeah, are they feasible? Yeah, like we're going to have to make them feasible. There's going to be several European nations that would have to come together to build something like this. But yeah, so I think things will happen. I mean, sea levels will rise regardless. There's a certain amount, even if we change the day to zero, that temperature, there's always a lag time, so it will rise a little bit more. Temperatures of the ocean, there's a baked-in amount where it will rise a little bit more. What we see today is what we pumped out into the atmosphere like years ago, right? So, I mean, yeah, like we just need to see that, these ideas that are so crazy, like, and I think like a lot of people don't, when they say, it's not going to be now, it's not going to be today, like, even sitting in Vancouver, you don't think that tomorrow the ocean's going to swallow you. But it's like, at what point is it going to be? Kind of like when it comes to oil and gas, or at what point are we going to stop using oil and gas, or at what point are we going to stop, emitting or whatever. But there's going to come a day where, we have to deal with those repercussions of what we do. So, yeah, like, yeah, pretty much like there's some interesting papers out there. I think you can Google them. Just for that one, I think it's pretty interesting.
So where do you find a lot of these like where do you get a lot of your like the readings from?
Oh, people ask me that all the time. I don't know. Like, I don't read like, a lot of fiction, so I like digging. I don't know, like Google's amazing. Obviously, there's a lot of fake news and real news out there. I think it's about when you're passionate about something, you just read multiple sources of stuff. Some of it is to some degree like, fiction, I guess, to some degree, like this guy's massive dam project. I mean, it's his research paper about it. It has never happened before. It's feasibility study. It's a project. It's essentially a project that he's proposing that can happen, right? So I think it's about digging up on papers. Like, when you're passionate about something, you just keep on digging. So some guy says this, well, look up his sources, look up other people's opinions. I don't know, like, there's people that I talk to and they're like, even flat earth theory or young earth theory or whatever. I find that stuff interesting, like, why do these people believe in this? Like, I gotta read up on it. Sometimes it gives me a chuckle. Right? Yeah, like, all these things are interesting to me. Like, I like reading. I like reading weird things, I guess.
So we're kind of like coming up to like about an hour. So I have one last question for you, but like, this has been super. Every time we talk, I'm always I always get like it's always a good time. I always feel like I walk away with like a little bit more than I came in with, which is always a good feeling to have. Um, but for me, like my last question to you is kind of, uh, you know, on our team we kind of have this saying, you know, what are you doing to kind of break your inertia? And the essence of that question is kind of moving out of autopilot state and kind of being more cognizant of what is the status quo and challenging that. So I guess my question to you is how have you broken your inertia?
I think it's tough because like I think I'm the type of person that enjoys the feel of adrenaline and enjoys the feel of challenges and
Yeah.
facing those fears. I've never been that type that's like, oh, you know, like, I can't, I won't even try. I mean, when I was talking to my guide, so clear, like the phone call for the Arctic, he was like, we were talking about flights up to the Arctic and they were crazy expensive and hard to organize and whatever. And he's like, well, why don't you fly into Clyde? Would you be up for, you know, riding out to Quan Inlet with me? It's really tough. And I don't, he's like, I'm just going to tell you, like, it's not easy. It's horrible. It's nothing. You're not a tourist. You're sitting riding on sea ice. It's sketchy. You're camping outdoors. There's no heat. Gave you the spiel. I'm like, you know, like I have done quite a bit of challenging environments, blah blah blah. He's like, this is like nothing. Like this is not climbing Kilimanjaro. This is not, you know, going to Antarctica. This is zero pamper. You know.
Yeah.
But you know, I just told him like total lie, like total lie. Yeah, no problem for sure. Had no idea, you know, had no idea if I was ready for it. But you know, totally, yeah, of course I can do it. No problem. I'm tough, right? I'm pretty sure when he saw me get off the plane, he was just like, "Oh my goodness, she's like 100 pounds, like this tiny little Asian girl, right?" But you know, he told me I surprised him, so um, it's like you know, I became part of the team pretty quick, and I think you just can't doubt yourself. I think
Mhm.
humans are incredibly powerful. Like your
Yeah.
mind, your ability. Um, one of the weakest thing about us that we let get in our way is really our own doubt.
Hmm.
So you know, we let things that are very illogical just kind of plague us. Like when I look at like a bungee, like I've gone bungee jumping, and I remember like skydiving was a lot easier than bungee jumping. I could say like it. I think that moment there is what I would say is what breaks inertia, right? Like
Hmm.
you sit there and the things that go through your mind are completely illogical.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like most things won't kill you in life, okay? Like
Yeah.
if you look at a whole bunch of people eating that food in Africa, in Indonesia, in wherever, it's not killing them.
Hmm.
You know, why why are you so opposed to trying it? The texture? The
Hmm.
do people say, oh, it's a texture, it's a mind block, it's a whatever. But look at those people, they're perfectly fine. This is what they eat all the time.
Yeah.
You know? Um, is it a big deal that you don't get to the top of Kilimanjaro? No, but at least you tried. Like
Exactly.
you can give it a shot and surprise yourself. I
Hmm.
would say like give yourself the opportunity to surprise yourself, right?
Hmm.
And stop letting the illogical things, like don't get me wrong, have some logic about, you know, your approach. But there's a lot of things that people say that are completely illogical. Like
Hmm.
texture isn't gonna kill you, right?
Yeah.
Like texture of a food group of anything is not gonna kill you. Um,
Exactly.
Likewise, trying often isn't going to kill you. Bungee jumping is not going to kill you. Like, people are running. Don't go to a very sketchy place to do it, okay? But, like, you know, you go to a reasonable place, you see a whole bunch of people jumping, nobody's dying, ropes aren't snapping. Chances are, if you jump the rope's not going to snap. You know, odds are in your favor. Um,
Yeah,
Live
I
it.
mean,
You know, give it a try.
I, I'm. That's a really good thing to end off on. I think that's a really good kind of philosophy to have, because you're right. We will often, like, we don't even we can't see the limits because we don't even try,
Yeah.
and we tell ourselves it's not possible before even starting. And it's amazing because, like you said, people are uh, way more capable than they give themselves credit for. It's actually is insane how much one person can accomplish, how much one person can do if they just decide to put away doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like companies like yours, like just like you guys really help people with that. I think you guys do some pretty crazy stuff, things that people think are impossible, things that people think are crazy, and you allow them to, you know, some sort of safety net to some degree, right? With your experience, with your guides, um, to experience something different, something out of the box, which I think we're so used to living in a box that I think that's, you know, everything has to be so safe and logical,
Mm-hmm.
and like no doubts of anything illogical going through your mind, you know, to,
Mm-hmm.
to do something. And I think one of the things that we have to understand is failing is okay. You know,
100%.
like if you want to go and try and climb a mountain, it's okay to fail. Like it's okay. Don't kill yourself over it, but like, you know, it's okay to turn back.
Exactly.
But at least you can say you took that journey, right? And I think there's so much value to be had in that journey that you try.
Yeah.
So even just that one day of camping, you know,
Yeah.
will be memories.
It's like not attaching yourself too much to the result, but like attaching yourself more to a process and committing yourself to a process.
Yeah, I think like in Buddhism, it's kind of like that idea of detaching, I guess, from expectation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if your expectations are, I guess, subtle art of not giving a fuck, I guess.
Yeah.
That book, like, so it's kind of like that idea of where do you put your expectations? You know, like if your expectations for climbing Kilimanjaro is a lifetime experience, you know,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, that that is going to be a lifetime experience. You are going to achieve that expectation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If your expectation was just to get to the top of that mountain, that is not going to be that to me. That's not a good expectation to have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that expectation, though, yeah, like a lot of people obviously want to be at the top of that mountain. Um, your expectations, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? When you put your expectations
Mm-hmm.
as something objective instead of as an experience, as
Mm-hmm.
an internal growth, as a spiritual growth, as a whatever. When you put things like, I expect to see a bear, a polar bear in the Arctic. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
setting myself up for failure, even though I really want to see it. I mean, to me, my expectation was to experience the Arctic, to see the Arctic,
Mm-hmm.
to just be there and to just be there. I mean, just to be there is pretty amazing to experience that expedition, right?
Yeah.
But the more specific you are about, it's kind of like about your goals and these goals that are not so important, right?
Yeah.
Like being at the top of Kilimanjaro lasts 5 minutes, you know, and it's a bragging right. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the experience, the stories that come with the journey, that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to like who are you doing it for, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're doing it for yourself, I think that like yeah, like get to the top and like be happy and proud that you did it for yourself. And if you don't make it, you didn't make it, but that's okay because you tried.
Yeah, but it's also recognizing to me, when we're talking about like this mountain, and I think it's just a great metaphor for it, is that, people always say it's about that journey, and it really is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about, going to Kilimanjaro, I don't talk about being at the top. Honestly, we were at the top for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I talk about the journey with my friends, with the camp, with the day-to-day activities. I talk about those things of getting to the top. I talk about getting to the top. It's not about being at the
Mm-hmm.
top. So
Yeah.
if you went on that journey, even if you didn't get to the top, trust me, your stories are just as good as my stories. And I made it to the
Mm-hmm.
top. You know what I mean? Like, there was no difference.
Yeah.
Our experience was the same, except for that last 10 minutes. And that last 10 minutes isn't the story. It isn't the story that I tell,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's a point, is a lot about that journey. Like, if you want to tell a story, you just have to start.
Well, I gotta say, thank you. It's been a good time again. Um,
Not 6 hours.
it's not 6 hours of time. It's not, but you know what? Honestly, I could keep this conversation going, but I have to consider the fact that I have to edit this after, and so so it's not the same kind of like there's consequences. So, but
All
yeah, no,
right.
really, no. Honestly, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it. You know what? I'm excited to whatever the future holds. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of awesome projects that we'll see each other on, and
absolutely.
I hope you keep doing what you're doing because we always need people to kind of spread awareness because a lot of times people just don't know what's going on. People don't know. People have no idea, and it's like even from even this conversation between you and I've learned a lot. I've learned things, and I gotta now take that information and try to disseminate it and understand it and apply it to my life.
Yeah, I think with every interaction, we should always strive for that, right? Like, I
Yeah,
think I've learned so much talking to you, like, over this period, this 1.5 hours, and over the last 6 hours, the
yeah,
last conversation we had. Like, uh, we all bring something to the table.
mhm,
So, I think the way you guys run your groups and stuff, I think that is a goal. Is that it's not just about expedition leaders giving, 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 and people that sign up for it taking, taking, taking. It's
mhm.
about, as much as leaders are giving with every experience, they're enjoying, they're learning from, the clients as well.
Exactly. Alrighty. Well,
Hey,
I'm just gonna stop recording right now. It's not gonna cut off the. It's not gonna cut off the audio. Hey everyone! Thanks for tuning in to the Inertia Network podcast. If you like what you heard, come check out our website, inertianetwork.com, or follow us on Instagram at Inertia Network so you can see what our journey has looked like. Hope we can continue on this adventure together, have some meaningful conversations, and break our inertia. See you next week.